webinars. Okay, so recording is in progress. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this second rendezvous of our training activities for public engagement and societal impact at the University of Sassari. It's a series of webinars that just started last week, a couple of weeks ago, with a contribution from our guests who talked about the policy situation and the general framework of changing university, which brought the more general changes in policy for higher education and research, as far as responsible research and innovation, public engagement, and societal impact is concerned. Today, we have the second webinar is rather dedicated to more, I would say, more practical things, more practical issues. Last time we set the general framework. Today we will try to go more into practices with the help of Rector and Emma McKenna, who will introduce us to curriculum innovation through learning with communities. And they will talk about a current and ongoing project that they're running, which is funded by the Erasmus Plus program, which in fact is in line with the previous EU Horizon 2020 funded project, which was called Enrich, which was enhancing curriculum in RRI in the curriculum in higher education. University of Sassari was partnering that project, just as well as Norbert Steinhaus, who is our guest today as well, who has accepted to come and greet us on behalf of the Living Knowledge Network, which is the network that the international network of science shops, and Reka's, Emma's, but also our universities are partnering in this wonderful network. So without much further ado, I shall give the floor to Pier Andrea Serra, who's Vice Rector to Third Mission at the University of Sassari, to greet us today. Pier Andrea.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for your presence at this meeting. The webinar, which opens a cycle of training action meetings on public engagement, is organized by the University of Sassari with the collaboration of Apenet, the Italian network of universities and research centers for public engagement. One of the main aims of our commitment is to enhance public engagement as a substantial and non-accessory element in the training of researchers and students and in the definition of their role. The meeting is mainly addressed to teachers interested in didactic innovation based on research and collaborative practices, community engaged research and learning, an innovative teaching approach that gives students the opportunity to participate in research and learning projects based on ideas, interests, and needs of the community. This afternoon, a wide range of tangible research and learning opportunities and application will be presented. Community-based learning and research, community service learning, participatory action research, and the experiences of science shops. The webinar is conceived as a practical and interactive training opportunity for those interested in the topic of educational innovation through the involvement of students in research activities and in collaborative practices with society. I thank very much Professor Andrea Vargiu for organizing this meeting and the expert colleagues for accepting our invitation to speak about community engaged research and learning today. Thank you very much and enjoy this meeting.
Thank you, Per Andrea, and I shall leave the floor to Eraldo Sanna Passino, who is Vice Rector for teaching at our university, since our meeting today is specially dedicated to learning and to students. So please, Eraldo, floor is yours.
Thank you, Andrea. Only 2 minutes. I'm really happy to introduce the work of this important meeting. However, the need for an innovative teaching approach to give our students the opportunity to participate in research and the learning project based on ideas, interest and needs of the community, and to feel at the center of an even bigger community. Our university must continue to work for a more international and open dimension. It must to find a way to be truly the engine of the development of the territory. It must do its part to contribute ideas to help Sardinia face the crisis we are going through. You know, we are operating in a region, Sardinia, which has a specific difficulties related to insularity, the isolation of inland areas, delays in the construction of communication networks, low investment in research, and weakness on the production sector. We are focused on unprecedented challenge. We carry with us a tradition of secular studies that are part of our identity as men and women of today, and can constitute the cornerstone, the original component of our entry into the world of science and technology. Within the Mediterranean basin and beyond, our university can play a leading role by engaging in cooperation that fosters cultural confrontation, that breaks down all the new barriers that filling a gap that the world is experiencing dramatically. I would like to thank Andrea and Pier Andrea for their constant commitment, the offices for their collaboration, and finally, a special thanks to the speakers, Emma McKenna and Enrica Matolei, who will share the result of their experiences with us, and to Norbert Steinhaus, who will introduce their activities. I wish everyone that this day represents a time for growth for our scientific community, a time for exchanging new ideas and experiences. Thank you.
Thank you, Eraldo. Thank you very much, and thank you for your words. Might I remind that this meeting today is part of a wider initiative that the University of Sassari is undertaking to, as I said before, we are presently working to another meeting that will most probably take place on December the 13th. We shall work on higher education and SDGs. We're presently organizing with Peter Wells from UNESCO and with Iligi van Lant from who is the president of the International Association of Universities. We are furthermore checking with more guests who are part of Apenet, the Italian network of publicly engaged university and research centers that was mentioned by Pier Andrea before, and also with the network of University for Sustainability in Italy. So we shall continue, and and further webinars are presently being organized. These will introduce our community of practice of researchers and teachers at the University of Sassari to in-person seminars which will hopefully lead us to better shape our strategy and our action for more and more engaged research and teaching at our university to serve our community. So thank you very much, Eraldo. We shall keep our conversation going in the following months. Now I shall leave the floor to Norbert Steinhaus, who is one of the leading persons in Living Knowledge Network. I have asked to introduce us to the Living Knowledge Network, but also to give us not only a formal greeting, but also to introduce us to the general context. So Norbert, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Andrea. Good evening, everybody. I'm very happy and proud that you invited me to talk a bit about living knowledge and the science shops. These keywords were mentioned already in the speeches and the greetings from your vice rectors. Andrea, am I allowed to share some slides, which makes it a bit more visual? So yes. Then I will share my screen and find the right presentation. Here we are, and I hope you can see it. It's the title. So I try to be short because the problem usually is when you ask me about science shops, I can't stop talking. And so I try to make it as short as possible. And we'll go back a couple of years into the past, into the last century. It's the talk of the ivory tower with all the scientists standing above, let me say, the common citizen and almost unreachable. And this was the starting point when considering that there was something already written many years before we first thought about science shops, and this was the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And in Article 27, it says, everyone has the right freely to participate in the cultural life of the community, to enjoy the arts, and to share the scientific advancements and its benefits. So this was the starting point, and thinking of the ivory tower, we identified as engaged students and researchers in the beginning that there is a huge gap between science and citizens. And the idea came up, why not trying to bridge that gap and try to find a way to make these two groups learn from each other, to listen to each other, and to understand each other. And this is where science shops entered the stage. Quite a couple of years ago, but still a strong movement, and I will show you some more about this a bit later. So what is a science shop? We gave us a definition when we started the international cooperation. A science shop is a unit that provides independent, participatory research support in response to concerns expressed by civil society. Definitions are complicated. In fact, it means if there's a problem in society, why not taking this problem and forwarding it to researchers, to universities who have resources and the possibility to educate their learners on behalf of real life problems. So in fact, science shops are civil society contact points to bridge the gap between society and other stakeholders and the universities and research units. As mentioned before, science shops started quite a while ago. It was in the late 60s, early 70s, the last century. But from the beginning of the year 2000, and with the support of the European Commission, we were able to establish a network of science shops. We called the network Living Knowledge because we're talking about different knowledges. And we brought together many organizations and units all around the world. But let's start as it was a mainly European-based idea with the science shops, although there were similar activities in North America. But throughout the years, and you can see from the number of bullet points that show up, the idea spread across Europe. And one important thing to mention here is that not every unit that works as this bridging organization, as this contact point between those different stakeholder groups, they all have their own name. And in fact, it doesn't matter what name it is. So the original name was Wetenschapswinkel, which is the Dutch name. And if you translate it directly into German or English, in German it's Wissenschaftsladen, in English it's Science Shop, and you find many other similar words related to Science Shop, Research Shop, but of course also the community-based research centers or the students learning with communities from Ireland, for example. And as I said, it's spread across Europe, but not only in Europe. You can find organizations working in a similar way. So you can also find Science Shops worldwide. And I really see it with great pleasure that throughout the last years, it was possible to establish a French-speaking Science Shop network throughout Africa and Haiti and Canada. So it's not an idea, although mainly centered in Europe, but it's not only an idea which found its fertile ground in European countries, but also across continents. And the Living Knowledge Network, the International Science Shop Network, is not the only network working in this field. And we are cooperating with a couple of other networks all around the world. And you might already heard of the UNESCO Chair for Community-Based Research. There's the European University Association. There is EXCITE, the European Network of Science Centers and Museums, the Global University Network for Innovation, and also the Asian Pacific University Community Network. So we're in exchange with these colleagues. We learn from each other. We attend conferences or partners, or we ourselves organize to be not to have an ivory tower on a broader scale, but also to exchange with different regions of the world and to see what's happening there. Because it's about knowledge, and with an academic or university background, you definitely are aware of scientific or expert knowledge, the peer-reviewed knowledge produced through scientific research. But there's more out there. There's, of course, political knowledge. We might agree on that this is the knowledge of those persons in positions of power who are able to influence a decision-making process. But what we think is extremely important also for the consideration of, let me say, civil society concerns and the work we can do together with them, it's the individual local knowledge, the lived experiences of an individual in a place. This is nothing you can learn from books. You have to talk to these people, you have to listen to these people to make the best out of, to create value from this expert knowledge on the individual local level. And of course, getting a bit broader again, there's a collective cultural knowledge when, for example, talking about indigenous people who know a lot or even a lot more about natural resource management. So when cooperating, when going out to communities, it's about I don't want to say harvesting, but it's about combining these different types of knowledges for the benefit of the expressed concern and the needs. And this is recognized. I said the first activity or the first networking support came from the European Commission, and the European Commission has a lot of progress now on their agenda, or can see a lot of progress when you think about European funding support. Maybe you are aware of the Science Within Forced Society program of the last stream of the last research framework program. The new framework program is called Horizon Europe, and they already started a couple of years ago to develop a strategic plan which is now in action for the European Research and Innovation Program. And you can find terms like sharing knowledge in open collaboration with all relevant knowledge actors. The strategic plan mentions continuous engagement with society, citizens, and economic sectors. The study of citizens' participation and public engagement, also in industrial technologies, is mentioned. And it is mentioned it should be a two-way engagement in the development of technologies, empowering end users and workers. And there are, of course, many more of these keywords you can find in the strategic plan. So it became extremely important in future research and future innovation. And because you're working in the context of education, it might also be interesting to have a look at the Commission's work which is underway with the UNESCO activities on education for sustainable development and the Sustainable Development Goals. They're developing a European education area. The European Commission has developed a European competence framework with a lot of literature already collected, what is necessary when we talk about sustainable competences. And in focus and on top of the list of the areas they are addressing, it's education for climate coalition and education for environmental sustainability. Also language learning, key competences for lifelong learning, and many more. But you see, from climate coalition and environmental sustainability, I think there's a clear path to citizens' engagement and collaboration with all stakeholder groups. So, to an end, we can already report on many efforts that have been put forward to increase and improve the society-university interaction. It's a long way. It was a long way, and I think there's still a bit to go. And definitely you with your third mission activities in Sassari and the webinars you're now organizing, you're making a big contribution to make this approach more open, more aware of what is going on here. We can say that we want the best science for the world, not just the best science in the world. And what we have learned throughout our activities in the science shop work we did, it's not about the if, it's about the how of when thinking about integration of civil society and other stakeholders in our research activities. So don't give a destination, give a sense of direction. So thank you very much for your attention. I wish you good success for this webinar and of course also for the following webinars. And I pass the floor again back to the coordinators of the webinar, and thank you again for your attention.
Thank you, Norbert.
You should switch on the microphone, Andrea.
Thank you. You're right. I was thanking Norbert for being so concise and precise, giving us very useful information, and besides the information about the Living Knowledge Network. So thank you very much again, Norbert Steinhaus, who is, I forgot to say, from Wissenschaftenladen in Bonn, which is an organization which is not a university, but works exactly with universities and societies. So Norbert's organization is exactly that bridge that he was talking about. Norbert, in your presentation, you talked about creating value. I think this is something we shall try to concentrate upon. In the previous webinar, we had the possibility to refer to creating impact. But I think that one way to think about this issue is not only concentrated on impact. Emanuela Reale told us some very relevant words about this, but also about creating value from shared knowledge. So, and as you suggest, suggested today, there's a lot about not the if, but about the how, and the how is Recca and Emma will introduce us to some of the how they've been working upon in the last years, notably in creating value, in producing value for both students and communities. So I think Emma and Recca will introduce us to an interactive webinar, as far as we can be interactive online, but we're learning a lot in this with these new instruments. Recca is from Corvinus University in Budapest. She runs a science shop there, and from the Department of Management and Economics, if I'm not wrong, Recca. And Emma McKenna is from Queen's University in Belfast. She is responsible with other people of the local science shop. So Emma and Recca, thank you again, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Andrea, and I will share my screen if that's okay. Are you able to see that okay? Yep, I can see you nodding, that's brilliant. Yes. And I was just reflecting a little bit on what Norbert was saying there, and thinking about working with students, and thinking sometimes you do need to give a destination as well as giving a process. I'm sure you can imagine that, and I'm sure those of you who work with students will maybe be thinking about that yourselves. So it is lovely to be in Sassari again, even if only virtually. I wish it was in person, and to be able to support some of the really brilliant work that has been going on there. And just to sort of take you a little bit into it. So just to briefly introduce ourselves, I'm Emma McKenna and I work in Queen's University in Belfast. I have been around the Science Shop network for about 20 years now. I coordinate the Science Shop in Queen's in Belfast. I've also been around a few of the European projects, and particularly have done work on the policy side alongside Norbert and Andrea. I've been very grateful at times for the support that they've both offered. And I've been deputy coordinator of the Enrich project and now coordinator of the Circlet project that we're going to talk some more about, and have worked with and supported science shops across Europe. So it's quite exciting to think there might be some more people in Italy. I know that Andrea certainly has been forging ahead, and colleagues in Sassari have been forging ahead there, but it's quite exciting to think that there might be other people interested as well. Enrica, I think you'd like to introduce yourself now as well.
Thank you, Emma. Yes, please. And as Andrea said, I'm coming from Budapest and standing in the building of our university right now, and I'm a lecturer researcher there, an associate professor teaching courses in decision science, responsible decision making, sustainability, and social entrepreneurship. And some years ago, I was one of the founders of the local science shop Pier, and I have become the formal head of it this year as we were promoted to become another unit. And yes, I had the chance to meet all these great guys in one of the European projects, Enrich, and then this was actually one of the moments, the final inclination of ours to set up our science shop in Budapest. And actually, if we made this sort of double introduction, Andrea and us as well, we would like to invite you to the chat at least, and we would love to know who you are. So could you just please join us in the chat bomb, which means that we are inviting you to write answers to these questions to the chat. And then when we are saying bomb us, then please send the messages to us. And where you work, by that we mean that in what institution, in what field, just to know what is the background of yours. We know that's a very diverse audience today, and it's great to see that. And your questions means not literal questions maybe, but it would be great to know what brought you here today. So what would you like to learn and know from us? So that could be a sort of a helping point. And we are giving you some seconds to give an answer to these questions, your background and your interest. And if you have the chance to write something in the chat for us, then we are going to ask you to bomb us with that. So put those into the chat.
I'll start.
Thank you, Marta. And if this is a sort of an interactive something, then
Come on, Francesca.
it would be great to see in the chat first, and then we'll let you know where else later on. Thank you, Norbert. So again, if our introduction was too long, then I'm repeating that we would like to know a bit about you. So about your background and your interest for listening to this today. And thank you very much for sending your responses to the chat. We appreciate it a lot. You already see some nice diversity there. Thank you.
I can see there are people who cross interests with you as well, Reka.
Yeah. Thank you.
While we wait for more colleagues to write in the chat, might I remind that we shall have the Living Knowledge Network runs every other year a conference, an international conference, and we shall be having the international conference at the end of June this year in Groningen, in beautiful Groningen, hopefully in presence. The last one was online, and the call for contribution is presently open. You can check the call in the Living Knowledge website, which is livingknowledge.org, if I remember well.
Yes, and then you can select events and conferences and you will be there right away.
Last one in presence was in Budapest, wasn't it?
Actually, yes. So we've got, yes, local memories about that, certainly from 2018. So thank you very much for your responses. And so we are going to now proceed and talk with you. So Emma, may I ask you to hit the click to get to the agenda, just to let you know what is going to be our afternoon and evening about. We are going to briefly introduce our science shops in Belfast and Budapest, and of course we'll let you know about the CERL project and its tools in general, and then we go into the details of local case studies of community engaged learning. We took 2 per science shop to you from various disciplines to see how our lecturers engaged in this activity and what sort of projects they have been running last year. We actually planned a short comfort break for us in order to introduce a small group discussion of yours, when we would like to invite you to prepare for a large group discussion or a Q&A with questions to us, so to see what resonates with you in what we talked about and what sort of questions we should talk about in the second part of this day today. And if we move on, I guess we are going to get to the science shops first in Belfast.
So just a little bit about Queen's University and about the science shop there. And I have to say, I was really listening hard to what your Vice Rector for Teaching was saying, because when you were talking about the situation in Sardinia and this kind of how it is to be in an island and how it is to be slightly separate and isolated, I was really feeling a great sympathy with that. Obviously, our university isn't as old as many of the Italian universities, but in the UK system, it would be regarded as quite old. We're a member of the Russell Group, which is to say we're a research intensive university. We have about 24,000 students and about 4,500 staff. So we're, medium size, I guess. And certainly Northern Ireland is quite a small region. So not unlike Sardinia, actually 1.8 million people, just very marginally bigger by population. And I suppose in Queen's, we would see ourselves as both a regional and an international university, and around a third of our students would be international students, which obviously for this kind of work presents particular interesting opportunities and challenges too. So the science shop actually was one of the earliest science shops in Europe after the Dutch science shops. It was founded in 1989. There are only 2 universities in Northern Ireland, our university, Queen's, and then Ulster University, and we work together. So we're a joint science shop between the 2 universities. Effectively, what this means is that we each work with our own students, but when we work with the community, we present a joint face. So if a community organisation comes to me with a research question, I share it with my colleague in Ulster, and the same the other way around. And we both operate centralised science shop models, which means that we work with all faculties across the university, right from kind of medicine through to anthropology, so we cover quite a wide range. So I'll hand over to Rika now to tell you a little bit about the science shop in Budapest. You need to unmute, Rika.
And also about your university, our university, which is just behind the Liberty Bridge on this picture. And you can also see some of our recent, pictures with our new science shop managers and interns in this bottom nice little picture over there. We are situated in Budapest, and we are set to be the leading university in business and economics in Budapest and in Hungary, all over. We've got a quite long history in this field. You see 2 dates for funding the university. First, it was a faculty of a Royal Hungarian University, and then it has become a separate Hungarian university for economics. We seem to be on the local scale a big one in this business of ours, with our 11,000 students and more than 1,000 staff, half administrative, half teaching staff. And you see that our faculties are fairly limited: business, economics, and social science management. But actually, it is something new for us in the Corvinus Science Shop, since we have been growing out of the Dean's Office of the Business School in 2017, when 5 university lecturers decided to give a call to the Dean that we really would like to set up a science shop, and we were accepted. This idea was accepted to have a unit in the Dean's Office. But since we had a lot of institutional changes and faculties actually gone from our system, now we are having also a centralized model, and happy to serve not just the business school, the former business school, but with the ambition of having transdisciplinary projects with lecturers and students in economics and various social sciences. Now we are serving all institutes. And as a recent development, we have become something which is a competence center at the university, a separate unit which is not only doing the matchmaking, so connecting the various sectors, but also we have the duty and the vision of transforming teaching and research towards participatory and engaged, community engaged, activities. So this sort of upskilling of lecturers is part of our local activity.
And just to talk to you a little bit about our involvement in the Living Knowledge Network. So obviously, as Norbert said, it's been established, it's been around 21 years, I guess it's 21 this year. And we certainly, I think Rika as well, we have all found it really beneficial in terms of networking and mutual support. And certainly we have been involved together with Budapest in 3 projects now, in the Polaris project, the Enrich project, and the CERL project. The first 2 were funded through Horizon 2020, and CERL is funded through Erasmus+. Our initial focus was really on building capacity for engaged research, as Norbert indicated, and I suppose in some ways he's absolutely right that there's work to do there. What we would find is that there is much more demand within the community for research help and expertise than we have resource in the university to meet it. And this is why certainly a number of us have really focused on trying to build resources in universities. And that includes trying to work on changing the curriculum and trying to work on supporting academic staff who want to build an engaged culture amongst their students. And certainly that's something that I was interested to hear, was that people were thinking about how do you actually open up universities, because in some ways it feels like we've done the piece of work that involves people understanding and believing that engagement should happen, but this is about how engagement happens. And that's really been, I guess, the focus of many of us in the Living Knowledge Network over the last while. So I'll hand off to Rika now to talk about community engaged research and learning.
And this is the central term for us in CERL. And as with science shops, there are a lot of synonyms and alternatives in the activity as well, in these activities as well. Today, the community service learning was already mentioned, but we use the community engaged research and learning since we would like to go into both directions. However, could you yes, we are still in this one. However, in CERL, our fundamental focus is on upskilling lecturers, and in this sense, learning is in the forefront. And as you see, we understand it as an experiential education. So experiential in the sense that it includes strong reflection too. So not just experiencing, being on the field, collaborating, exchanging knowledge, but also having a strong reflection on it, and also allowing it to connect it to conceptual backgrounds, doing the abstraction of our findings and learnings on the field, and then maybe to take another turn and experiment again, and infuse our learning back into the field of doing the learning as well. So experiential learning is in the focus, and fundamentally the collaboration is highlighted here, how the 3 main stakeholder groups, students, lecturers, and community organizations are working together. Although, let me admit that since we started CERL, and we ourselves as the Science Shop in Budapest have become more established and thinking about our role, we always recognize that from this collaboration, the Science Shop is missing very much. So basically, there is a fourth actor, the Science Shop as well, who supports, who keeps the frames, who provides many times the safe environment to do this, and strives for quality. So basically, I guess we should extend these 3 stakeholder groups to a fourth one ourselves. And you see that we also included that what we are working on, societal challenges towards SDGs. And this also means that the societal challenges includes ecological ones as well. So we are not only in the field of social impact, but others are coming into. And we also understand it is something which is not an extracurricular add-on, maybe ad hoc potential volunteering activity, but being a strongly integral part of the studies of the students, thus integral part of the lecturing activities of educators. And if we move on, actually we prepared a slide where we talk about why is this important, why we would like to introduce CERL into the activities of lecturers. And this is a bit busy slide, sorry for that, but I approached it from 3 angles. And the first box on the left is more an abstract, high level, macro level approach, which talks about the social mission of higher education. And seeing your diversity here, it is nothing we have to talk about because you are very much aware of the third mission. And this would be something I have to talk a lot here in Hungary and in our school, but this is something which could be completely skipped in the case of this event. And we also usually talk about how there is a potential social impact of these activities in our prompt, closer or bigger surrounding an environment around the schools immediately and also in the long term. Of course, this is something many times we are thinking about and projecting, but we don't exactly know, since the measurement of the social impact and learning gain is a very interesting topic, requires a lot of resources. So we are doing it we are doing it in a very limited way so far. However, we are having big ambitions in this. And we also think this is important because if we are having the CERL infused in studies, actually this can be, a source of helping to have engaged researchers and lecturers for the future. And I'm having a trembling in my voice because we are always thinking about whether this could be a fully transformative idea, activity, which really transforms researchers and educators. However, of course, even if it's not a transformative teaching and learning, we can actually still end up with this engaged researcher, outcome of this. In the middle, in these blue boxes, actually what I present is what we tell to our lecturers and students, why to engage to community engaged research and learning. And probably you all know these ones, like having accurate and relevant cases and how to have the feeling of responsibility for a work which really has a stake both on the side of the lecturer and the students. And of course, we talk a lot about even the employability of students, since they are having, the experience. Otherwise, they might not have, if they don't have work maybe next to their studies. But let me just highlight the one which actually is very interesting in the forefront with our lecturers. They are pretty much enjoying how they get insights into new areas, into new sectors, into new communities. Many of them we worked with in the past years, and actually in the 4 years of our science shop, we worked with about 40 lecturers and about 70 community partners and more than 1,000 students. But many of these 40 lecturers come up with, not just, a saying that how nice it is, but some of them really changed their research track toward the topic the community partners are bringing in, first in a course project, first with a problem-solving, project, not even a larger research project, and then actually inspired the lecturers so much that they went into the field and made a change of this, even the line of their research, so to say. And maybe one more thing we are usually highlighting here, this is not listed here, but we are very much talking about in CERL, that lecturers actually, when doing this, for them, new type of pedagogies and methodologies, and when they are transforming their courses, they can approach this not only as in their lecturer's role, but also in their researcher's role. So if they are able and capable of having both of their hats, researcher and educator hat, at the same time, they actually also run a research process which can result in tangible publications about how they have changed their way of teaching. And basically, this is something we are promoting in CERL. We haven't got to the point when these sort of researches and papers are coming out of the pipeline. But let me just tell you that after the Enrich project, we here in Budapest, we have a special issue in English where lecturers say how the responsible research and innovation principles fertilize their teaching, and how they actually looked at this through a research which again contained RRI principles, and they wrote and they summarized their experiences in various articles. So we can give you the link if you are interested in these sort of publications, when actually the teaching is the subject of the research, and it all involves CERL or RRI in this case. And let me just very briefly call your attention to the right part of this slide, where we put some fundamental design principles of community engaged research and learning we try to work with. And this is coming, I mean, what we use as a resource is directly coming from one of our partners in this Erasmus Plus project, the Brussels ones, the guys in Brussels at the Vrije Universiteit Brussels. And they have great short videos on these design principles: transformative, collaborative, and authentic, the three ones they are highlighting. And this is what we try to present to our lecturers in CERL via examples of civil society organizations and working with civil society organizations. Thank you, Emma. I would like to hand it off for you right now.
So that is kind of the context in which the CERL project came about. We were having some of these discussions. We had been involved in the previous project that Rega mentioned, the Enrich project, which was about embedding responsible research and innovation in curricula. So we had done some work in looking at modules, trying to build community engaged research and learning, or responsible research and innovation into them. And what we realized was the bit that was missing in some ways was where the academics themselves. Certainly I know Rega is an academic, but in my role, I'm actually an administrative or an academic related member of staff. I don't supervise projects myself. So the piece about supporting and empowering academics to do this work of embedding engagement into their modules, it was really clear that that was something that we needed to do. And I guess the reasons that we were thinking about this was that we could see that if academic colleagues were empowered to make changes in their curricula, and sometimes that might be small changes and sometimes it might be a bigger change, it would create a better fit between the curriculum and the projects, the kinds of engaged research opportunities that we were bringing in. Certainly in our science shop for a long time, what we did was try to almost squeeze a research idea into a dissertation, and it didn't really fit, and we had to do a lot of work on that. Whereas when the curriculum fits, it makes it much easier. So this was something we wanted to work on in CERL. The other things that we wanted more students. I mean, we would have about 650 students come through our science shop every year, some in groups, some individually, but we knew we needed more because we always have more requests from communities than we have students. But we also wanted the students to have a better experience in doing the research projects. We wanted them to really understand what they were doing and learning. And often that was again tied to the curriculum. So it was tied to how they experience it and how they work with their academics on it. And the third thing, of course, because in the end, one of the main rationales of science shops is doing good quality pieces of research for communities. I would have to be honest and say some students do amazing work and it's really useful. Some students do pretty good work and it is useful. Some students do awful work and all you can do is say, I am so sorry to the community partner, and anyone who's worked with students will know this is true. So trying to enhance that quality is something that was really important to us. Not just for the students themselves as well, who do generally want to do good pieces of work, but also for the community partners who benefit in the end. And obviously our project website is there, and I was going to say very clearly, and the resources that Rika mentioned are there. If they aren't, we'll make sure they are, is what I'll say, honestly. But there are some good resources on that website if you would like to have a look, certainly from the previous project as well. So in terms of what we are hoping will come out of the Circlet project, and we have about 9 months to run on it now. We have another 9 months. We finish in September 2022. So we will have kind of how-to guides on running a learning circle to support academics. And we have run a module as well through our colleagues in Technological University Dublin. So we will have some information and a how-to guide from that. We hope that those will be out around April or May next year. We will also have a series of how-to guides in terms of how to embed CERL in modules. And we're hoping that that will include things like how to assess or mark these kinds of community engaged research and learning projects in the curriculum, how to write learning outcomes that would support them, how to work with students to help them recognize their own learning. And we would also have a series of case studies as well as part of the project. And I should have mentioned actually that the other partners in the project, I know Reka had mentioned Reed University at Brussels, and I had mentioned Technological University Dublin. We also have the Open University of Catalonia as part of the project as well. And we will, as I say, have case studies coming out of the project. We're working on some of the early stage ones right now, which we would hope will be on the website after Christmas. And then we'll have a full set at the end of the project. So I guess I'm handing back to you, Reka, now to talk a little bit more about the project.
Thank you. And when we were talking about, how to have better quality projects and more students involved, we finally decided to go for lecturers who already have the modules, the courses, and let's see how CERL could be embedded into those ones. So we were not aiming for developing new courses, not forcing lecturers to hack the system and to try to insert new ones, but work on the existing ones and see how in the institutional structure, how the existing frameworks, they can embed CERL into those. And we offer two major tools in Circlet, and one of them is an online continuous professional development module, which was developed by the TU Dublin colleagues, and they are together with us as the members of the consortium, and they run it in the autumn semester. So it is run now for the second time. And as you see, it is a quite intensive individual learning. And then there are Friday webinars where the members of the selected members of the 5 coming from the 5 universities are discussing and putting it into practice in discussion what they have learned from various resources. And what they need to do is to have quite soon, before Christmas, preferably, an agreement with a community partner about at least the timeline, how they are going to work together in the spring semester. So basically, not just the module they are going through, but they really have to put it into practice next semester in a course or in a thesis writing process. The other tool, which is, is our responsibility at Corvinus to lead this intellectual output in the Erasmus project, is about the Learning Circle, which has the very same goal of inserting CERL and embedding CERL into existing modules, but through a different format. We are having local learning circles in each and every consortium member, where again, those participants who applied and selected in a process during the spring semester are now having a facilitated peer learning process. And actually, one of the principles how we are running these learning circles is to create within your employing institution a safe reflection and a development space where you can really make your learning together with the others in the focus. And in these local learning circles, we see a great deal of diversity across the 5 countries. So even though we have created something which could be sort of implemented anywhere, we clearly understand, and very soon it was quite obvious that this should be contextualized and each and every consortium member adapted to their needs. Of course, COVID put an interesting layer on top of that. In some countries, we could still start it on site. In others, they had to move online right away. And again, this semester, we have a variation in person and online learning circle formats. Within the learning circles, we actually aimed for practicing experiential learning. And this is something I tried to explain in 2 slides ago. And let me just mention that this follows the Kolb's idea, the Kolb cycle of experiential learning we are introducing here. And a strong focus is on the reimagination of modules. And when we brought CERL, we didn't know that technology is going to come into pedagogy so straightforwardly in the upcoming years, but we also support colleagues to learn about tools for collaborating online. And not just with the students, but how to make it an engaging one for community partners as well. We also have a diversity of who are part of the learning circle, but fundamentally we have a goal of to include as partners, community partners and students as well, besides the lecturers, to have all 3 key stakeholders and us as sciential people as a 4th one, and having all the discussions there across these lecturers. And besides the local ones, we have initiated an international learning circle where the members of the local learning circle can meet. And last year we had 2 tracks, so fundamentally 2 series of international learning circles, a practice track and a research track. You might imagine that one of them was more about the learning and the other one was about research. And you also see that how across the 5 members of the consortium, we were able to set up CERL projects in the spring semester last year. So these are the 2 tools. And if we move on, then we are going to get to projects finally.
Yes, and actually I was just going to add to that we think we may run Technological University Dublin have expressed an interest in running the module again after CERL ends, and possibly running it as a summer school type of experience, because it is very intensive, and academics have reflected that it might be good to do in a more intensive space in 2 weeks or something. So if that's something you're interested in, please do let us know. I think we'll be opening a waiting list probably on the website sometime soon. But just to give you an example of how these projects work in practice. So the first example that I'm going to share from Queen's University is a very traditional, in a way, a traditional science shop project. So this was a dissertation topic for an engineering student. And I thought the example was good because I know Italy is a place where 2-wheeled vehicles are very much appreciated as well. You'll see that the context in Ireland is much different. People wear many more clothes. But this was about the barriers that there are on roads in Northern Ireland. So this is obviously to prevent cars from spinning out of control when they crash. The problem is you'll see that these barriers are very dangerous for motorcyclists. And this, there was evidence there that they are very dangerous for motorcyclists. So the organization was one that represents motorcyclists, and they asked for a student to look at what the impact of these barriers are on motorcyclists when they have an accident and what could possibly be done to improve them. They're quite common on roads in Northern Ireland, and motorcyclists have very bad injuries from them. So the student came along, she had a very good supervisor, and she had a strong interest in motorcycling herself, which is often the case. Students may have all sorts of motivations for taking projects on. And she did look at what the damage was to motorcyclists, and she produced some nice research around that. but she also looked at how those barriers could be, the word is retrofitted. So what could you add onto those barriers that might make them safer for motorcyclists? And in fact, when she had finished, the organisation brought the research to the local government department who are responsible for road maintenance. And the outcome for the organisation was that the government department have now agreed that they will not install any more of these barriers on roads in Northern Ireland, and that when they need to be fixed, they will make accommodations on them to ensure that motorcyclists are not so badly impacted. So it did really have a good impact, and the student as well really enjoyed the project and was able to use talking about it in interviews when she went out to do job interviews, because it was a very nice applied example. She also had a very good supervisor, I have to say. Our engineering students do tend to have very good supervision. They have very regular meetings with their supervisors, and the quality of work tends to be very, very high in engineering. Another example, this is one through CERL actually, so it's a non-traditional one for us. So we have a Faculty of Medicine, Health and Life Sciences, and we don't, in the science shop, we don't work with them a lot because the curriculum is so packed. And of course, we all want our doctors to know how to prescribe things, and you know, so there are very good reasons for the curriculum being very full. So it's quite difficult to find a space to put a community engaged research and learning project into. But our School of Dentistry, this is Suzanne Russell from our School of Dentistry, she was really interested in trying to see, was there a way of doing something engaged with students, even though it couldn't be a dissertation because it's not the way that it would work there. So she was running a module that was called a systematic review module. So this is where they're trying to teach students around evidence-based dentistry and how to go and do research on a topic. So she said, well, I think I could build a research question from a community partner into this module. And I had already worked with Springfield Charitable Association. They're an organisation in the west of Belfast, in quite a deprived area, in fact, who really have a strong interest in supporting older people and supporting people with dementia. So the photograph you see is of their new building, which is a daycare centre for people with dementia. And as we talked, they identified that actually there were problems with dental health amongst people with cognitive impairment, amongst people with dementia. And they said it would be really helpful for the students to go off and look at how dental health might be improved for those people. So the students went off and they did look at things like, what are the things that carers should do? What are the things that dentists could do? And they produced a series of leaflets for the organisation. So that's something where, and it was a full module, it was about, I think, 35 students. And the other thing from the organisation's point of view, that's 35 dentists who have now thought about how do you support people with dementia, who now, when they have a patient with dementia come to their clinic, they have a better understanding how to work with them. So even the research piece, the final piece is one thing, but there's also the outcome of having people in professional practice who better understand the issues that the people this organisation work with face. And I'm going to hand off to Rika now to talk a little bit about a couple of case studies in Corvinus.
Both of them I took here are coming from CERL, and they are very diverse, interestingly, at least to a point. This one I'm showing to you is was very important for us as well, because by that we entered to a new institute and a new discipline for the first time as a science shop after coming out of our business school context. And this is how we entered the Institute of Sociology. And we met a first lecturer in CERL who was willing to think about how to do a course project with CSO. And what is also probably important to hear as a difference between our cases and that of Emma's, that these are, both of them are course projects, not thesis research. And we sometimes even not call them research, but sort of problem solving, activities with CSOs. And in this case, also the CSO partner was a brand new one. And I also have to tell that that was the moment we had a very new science shop manager, and this was her first thing to organize. So new in every aspect. And maybe what is also important to figure out that if you see the lecturer, she's a PhD student. So somebody who is at the first steps of her career. And she was very brave in bringing the potential of a course, Foundations of Sociology, which is something taught to all first-year students in many BAs. You see 3 of them here: BA in International Studies, Politology, Political Science, and Communication and Media, which means that there are, you know, maybe 40, 50 parallel seminars which should be identical to each other. And again, I'm usually using the word hack, how to hack this, you know, identical, unified system is a question. And she was able to make it legal. So she very transparently was accepted at her unit at the institution to experiment with a course project, which was a voluntary one, or not a voluntary, that's the right word, not a mandatory, but an elective element in that course for students. And the partner is a Kitámpont, means that the northern point of support. And they are a documentary filmmaking foundation, quite well known in Hungary, with a lot of very important short documentary films about societal issues, winning quite many awards as well. In the right bottom corner, you see some of our Facebook posts about the first meetings with the lecturer in the top right corner, and with Balint, the chairman of the foundation, in the top left corner. And it was so great to see how in a second they could speak each other's language and they were connected. And we already knew that there was no exact question by the CSO at the beginning. So there was no defined problem. He was coming to us, but they will find something which they can actually work on. It was very, very clear. And basically partly what happened, that the documentary films, short films, entered the course as, you know, materials for study, and there was a lot of discussion about it, but this is still not a CERL project, as you know. And a group of students, these 5 students, to learn about, you know, qualitative research methodologies, and experiment with focus group methodologies. They were connected with the northern point of support and created the question together with them that let's choose one film of the many they have produced and see how is it understood by those watching it in a age group of the university students, and how their attitudes or approaches to the given societal issue changes as a result of the movie. And you probably, hopefully you see the movie as well in the, you know, bottom of this slide. I'm not sure whether you see the term bagage. You have quite many Hungarian words on it. Sorry for that. Bagage is an other non-profit organization working with Roma kids in a small village not far from Budapest. They are as a very acclaimed, acknowledged NGO there, and you know the documentary is about their work there. So in this CERL project, actually, we were able to bring in 2 community partners at the same time, and not only the focus group methodology and the focus group research was built up super nicely by the students and the lecturers in collaboration with the NGO, but there were 2 things later happening. One of them, that we took this project to the research week of Corvinus University. We have a research week at the end of each semester, where all the partners, students, lecturer, and Balint, the community partner, talk about how they themselves lived through this experience. And it was interesting to see how very different approaches they had, what were the the taken for granted ideas they knew about each other, and what were the new things they learned about their relationship after that in this reflective piece of workshop when they were talking about it. And the other unforeseeable outcome was that one of the students actually was offered a job by the NGO at the end. So she has now a half-time job there. And the other project we took here to you is, again, a problem-solving project, so to say. Here, both the partner and the lecturer were a long-time partner of the science shop. So basically, we had experience with them. And the course is Corporate Social Responsibility, again, a BA course. And the associate professor had run similar courses earlier with CSOs, NGOs, who are coming there, and during the course of the semester, students explore that who could be those corporations with some CSR attitude, whose profile is somehow matching the profile of the NGO, the CSO. And then they also come to the point when they explore and map out potential partnership between the corporation and the NGO. And the Ethnic Talents here is a agency for amateur, I would say, actors, but they are not even actors, but people, marginalized people, fundamentally Roma people, and they later moved on to other groups of deprivation. So they now work with homeless people as well. But the main idea of this NGO is to fight against whitewashing in movies, which means that if we have Roma people in movies, Ryanair's, actual Hungarian actors are playing it and not Roma peoples. And when non-Roma people are playing Roma people, they tend to use the prejudices and enlarge the prejudices and work with the stereotypes. So they are fighting the principle and the activity of whitewashing, and they try to bring in authentic Roma people by offering not just positions in acting, but they try to teach them and make them knowledgeable about the very many other sort of professions around filmmaking, and thus bringing opportunities from various sides of filmmaking to them. On the top left corner, you see a photo of one of their clients, a Roma boy who was finally selected to a corporate advertisement, and the advertisement is behind them as well. And again, you see a picture trying to figure out what the project will be. And here, what we learned through the Circlet Learning Circle, and that the lecturer with these many years of experience with working at CSO in this peer learning group actually engaged in a bit different work on quality, which meant that the project was not just introduced at the beginning and the students let do it, and then there was a validation point maybe halfway through and the final presentation at the end. But now each and every tasks in the course is somehow thoroughly thought through and connected the idea of the project question, of the project problem. So this embeddedness of the CERL project to the course went to a very different level in this course, I would say. So this is the second example and the last at the same time for now. Which also means that we covered all 4 questions of ours. And now we would like to, on the one hand, offer a short break for you to think about these questions. And after the short break, Marta will put us into smaller groups to think about your experience with us right now. So what do you think resonated with you while we were talking? What was clear, what wasn't? What did you like, what you didn't? What was telling to you something or what didn't? And is there any part of these stories you wish to know more about? Is there anything that challenges you? So in the short group discussion, it would be great if you are a bit, talking about us behind us, and generate some questions to the discussion after the break. So we are planning a 5-minute break and planning to put you into groups at 7 for the 15 minutes of discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Reka. So we're breaking up a little bit till 5, and then Marta, you will open up the rooms. How does it happen?
I will put all of you in 7 rooms just after the break. You have to just accept to enter the room.
Okay, thank you.
So we plan to have groups of 4 fundamentally, and Marta is just creating it, and magically it will happen.
Okay.
And I will put you back into the plenary after 15 minutes. Okay?
Yes, at 7:15. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. You don't have any yoga exercises to propose to us, Reka? I remember being in some.
Very much.
And Andrea, just to say, we have one more slide for the very end, but. Okay,
perfect. We lost some participants on the way, but this is could be expected, because when you have a pause and after a long and engaging webinar, that's often the case. And splitting up in group, at times people try to stay there on the back and watch rather than participate. Sometimes this happens as well, but we're still some very patient and committed ones. So I shall give the word to the different groups. I don't know whom is speaking for who is speaking for which group. Gabriela, did you want to start? We were in the group together, yourself, myself, and Pier Andrea. Please.
Hello. Thank you very much for your very interesting explanation. I haven't worked on Science Shop previously, so I attended this course in order to learn more about it, and it's something that I'm going to do, looking at the material you are going to give us, and to the project website. My question is about how you can, if you have example of using Science Shop in different discipline, like for example biomedical discipline, for the empowerment of patient, working with a group of patients, and and also about law discipline. In my university, for example, there is a quite interesting example of clinical law clinic, in which students are committed in working in office that are open to the public, like for example helping people in jail to produce the document in order to ask for meetings, family, or spend one day off. So students are helping in compiling basically this module and see how the the law that they learn during the class can be applied into everyday life of people in jail or immigrant or stuff like that. I would like to know whether you see this example as example of science shop. And on the other hand, if you have an example of patient empowerment science shop. Sorry for my English.
Gabriela, you asked me to support you with English in case, but there was no need. I see. What do you do? Do you answer right away, or we collect all the questions? Rather, maybe this way. How do you prefer, Emma and Reka?
You decide. You're the moderator. We can work with you.
Let's collect the others, because we might otherwise run too short a time. Please, is there another group? Somebody from other rooms who wants to step in?
Yeah, the room number 3 with Christina. I'm a vet, she's a sociologist, so it was a very, very interesting relationship. We talk about experience and difficulties in the didactic restart process post-pandemia. And the difficulties for the student, but for the teacher too, in the new relationship, because the world is not the same. And this problem is very important for the small university, where there are many dropouts and not always adequate participation to the student, but to the colleague too, no? And so this is a present problem. So in 10 minutes, for me, I'm a vet and practitioner, so it's very easy to talk about student. I work in a small group, 8-10 maximum student, but the restart is not easy, because something is changed. Probably they have some fear, or I don't know, but it is harder than 2 years ago.
Thank you, Eraldo. Thank you. Shall we have another input from the groups?
Group number 5.
Yes,
Maybe?
from
Yes,
group
thank you. Yes, thank you very much. The first question is if you have a methodology to detect needs for communities, or what is your starting point, or do you have some criteria to work within communities and understand what lacks finally. The second question, Giuseppe.
Yes, the second question that raised from the group, it is more a doubt than a question. Is we realized that there are already several cases of this kind of approach in graduating students, but most of them are not institutionalized yet. So how label this kind of approach where there is not a science shop or a central institutionalization of this kind of approach. So how to promote this approach in the curriculum and recognize that it has a value for the community and for the university.
Do we have more groups or?
Yes, the small one, Francesca and
Michela. Yeah.
Michela.
Yeah, I'll be talking about our small group. We were actually exchanging experiences more than addressing questions, so we haven't behaved well. But there's a point that I was bringing up, and Francesca was sharing it, that is really to do with how to come in and come out of the shops. What I mean by that is, from the experience that I've had in participatory research and also teaching, there's a question to start with when you start with this kind of experience, because at least in Italy, in a lot of cases, organizations are not used to work with universities. So you need to build trust and to explain what the objectives are, because they don't expect it, which is good. It's a good impact in that sense, but it takes time. What is even more complicated, at least from my experience and from an ethical point of view, once you complete the project, if he ever finishes, which is a question in the first place, there's a lot of high expectations that you raise, which again is good. But the question is how you feed continuously with this experience and at the same time make sure that you do not leave expectations too much open, if not even disappointed. So if you have any experience to share in this sense, it will be nice. And thanks a lot for the webinar. It's been really great also to know who's working on and interested in these themes. Thanks.
Thank you, Michela. So lots of interesting questions and challenging questions. Rekka, word to you, and also Norbert, since you're there, you might as well jump in if needed.
I could speak, I suppose, quickly to the question around working in law and in medicine, because we have done both, because we're a broad-based university. And certainly we have had some projects in our biomedical school. I suppose the challenge in students working with communities and working directly with patients is research ethics. And this is something we have struggled with, because the research ethics procedures now are so rigorous, and rightly in many ways, that it can be very challenging for within a student timescale to have a project approved through the ethics committee. And for us, it also has to go to the health service ethics board if research will happen. So many academics in the medical faculty will just say, we will only do that kind of research with PhD students. And typically PhD students already have their topics predefined. So they don't have an opportunity to work with the community in the same way. We would have pieces of research done that touch on medical issues, but don't work with patients. So for example, last year we had research done with a biomedical student who was looking at attitudes to sunbeds. I know these maybe not so common in Italy, but in Ireland, in order to tan your skin, you have a sunbed that you would go to. What do the public know about sunbeds? So you aren't talking to people who have issues, you're just talking to the general public. So in that case, it was okay for research ethics. And on the law side, I was just going to add, we certainly have worked with the clinical law module, and it has been very much science shop practice because we began with community need. I know my colleague in Ulster University is still doing that. I think, Rika, you were going to say something.
we have now one ongoing project, which is an interesting one, where we work with Neurodiversitas, which is an organization for people with autism, and they themselves, the organization is people with autism, so it's headed by them. And they have come up with an idea to fight the very vague regulation of how people with disability are actually, I don't know what is the right word in English, ranked into different categories and what sort of support they can receive from the state. And this sort of vague regulation is now tried to be understood and cut through. And students are working with students from informatics, and they try to develop an app for people with disabilities. If they enter their data, it is going to be clear for them that what the system will tell about them as a result. So this sort of, twinning projects with low and IT is happening right now. This is one of the examples.
And
maybe, yep.
Sorry, do not want to interrupt you.
Mm-hmm.
No, I just wanted to mention two organizations from the Living Knowledge Network in Barcelona, which is IRSI Caixa and which is IS Global or IS Global. And especially the last one, they took a big role in establishing the French-speaking network as well. And there's a sign shop now at Institut Pasteur in Tunis, in Tunisia. So, and they are dealing with health issues. Yeah, so these are examples you probably could take from the Living Knowledge website or directly addressing these organizations and talk with them about their experiences. I'll put it in the chat.
And basically to, manage the expectations here, can we just discuss that how far we go in time, since as I understand we are over time now and we don't want to be irrespectful with the participants. So how many minutes do you want us to move on, and how quick we shall be with the answering the questions, just to be transparent about that?
Yes.
Like, can we have a 10 more minutes up until 1:45, and then we try to finish it? So what do you think? Could that be okay?
Okay, 10 more minutes
Okay.
would be fine.
So we try to be quick. So Emma, which of the questions you wish to move on?
I think managing expectations was, this is one of those things where you say, welcome to my life, because of course, that really is an issue. Some organizations have very low expectations, in fact, and are really just pleased that a student will do some work with them. Other organizations want everything and then some more. And it's my job to manage those different expectations. I try to be really clear that our resource is a student resource, that some students do excellent work, some students do okay work, some students don't do their work at all. And I suppose what I really work very hard to do, because of course we work with organizations over 10 or 20 years, some of the organizations I still work with since I started my job, we try to make sure that they benefit over time, and we're quite clear about that. So you may not benefit with every single project, but you will benefit over time. The other thing that we would do, because we work with students right across the university, and we have done for a long time, engineering students almost always do good work. Management students almost always do good work. Some other areas maybe a little bit less so. So we try to spread those students amongst organizations, and then maybe if we also try to manage expectations. If we're working in a new area and we don't know what the outcome will be, we say to the organization, we don't know. We can't, we're really not sure here. So I guess it's being as honest as you can. Or if a student has maybe a particular difficulty, of course you can't say this student, their mother is dying, or, there are things you can't say, but you can say, I think they have challenging circumstances. So we would try to be as clear as we can with organizations in order to manage expectations, and with students as well, because sometimes students expect a lot from the organization. So we would try to be really clear if an organization has very little time to give. so that the student knows that before they go into the research process, that they will be effectively working pretty much alone. So that really, a lot of that comes down to us, and it's partly why it's good that there's a science shop, because in a busy academic workload, I think those things are much harder to manage. You may have something to add, Rika.
Surprisingly, we have much more problems with the low expectations of the organizations than the high, because if they are very thankful for receiving nothing, then actually set the bar and the example for the lecturer and for other students. And it's so much difficult to raise and elevate that later on in a next project with the lecturer, for instance. So if they see, if the community partners were happy because they were, you know, accepted to be a partner in a high-ranked university, then actually it is so much demoralizing for further projects. So interestingly, this is a bigger challenge for us than the other way around. And we do what we learned from Emma, to be transparent about it, managing it from the other end, certainly. And actually with the trust, probably in line with this question of expectations, just very briefly, visually, we now began to thank the trust of the CSOs at the end of the project, that how nice that they trusted us, and they trusted us to answer the questions. And usually they are very surprised that the trust question comes into the picture, that how on earth they wouldn't trust us. And I guess this is a heavenly situation so far, that they don't even have a question mark right now, or many of them don't have. It may come later, but we see the faces that it is so taken for granted many times. But it is also the case that we are ourselves not working with communities as such, but community organizations, and that might be a bit different, you know, working with communities and community organizations. There could be a difference there. Shall we move on to the needs assessment, maybe, Emma? And I might just tell one word about it, because I would love to bring in a method. Again, the Brussels guys are experimenting with. They are having walking interviews with community people in the community. So one of the newcomers of the science shop has done interviews, like 1 or 2 hour interviews, walking through the community. And this is not even a needs assessment yet, but fundamentally, you know, setting the relationship with the community to make a shared understanding about what is going on. So they don't even talk about that if there is going to be a relationship or a project, or what is the exact needs the project needs to answer, but they have this, you know, spacious, timely approach of let's have a walk and let's see what we learn from each other. And I guess this is a very nice broad approach. It's probably not efficient, if I may use this word coming from a business school, but otherwise what we are doing is that actually we bring in our school the wording of what we teach a lot to students, and this is problem definition, how to make problem definition properly. And we are very keen to be around in whichever way the idea, the project is evolving, first with us, then with the lecturer, then with the students, so probably in 3 steps. And we would like to be there to understand that whether it is a feasible project, and it is really still the question of the community partner. And what we are paying attention to these days, and this is a change in how we approach things like 2 years ago, and thanks God we have 2 science shop managers who have the ability and also the resource to do this, is to support the project, the course project, not all each and every thesis project, but the course project along the way, and have quite many validation points and reflection points with all the partners. And this changed a lot in everything, in the needs assessment, in the trust, in, you know, the problem solving, etc. Emma?
Well, I'm thinking Norbert too might have some experience in, I know you tend to scope bigger, we scope small projects and you scope bigger projects. perhaps. And there may be some resources on the Living Knowledge website on this as well.
Yeah, so of course with bigger projects, you start from a different perspective. So it's what I first thought when I heard the question, it's about listening. It's about listening to people. And sometimes it's the small scale activity that comes from this listening. And sometimes you figure out that this problem, this issue expressed also addresses other organizations, other regions. And then of course it could make sense to embed this in a larger activity. Nevertheless, what you said, Ricola, and also you, Emma, trust is nothing which comes from one second to another. It needs time to build trust. And so the best thing is if you keep in contact with these organizations, even if the project is over. I know this is a challenge for students working on something. So the best example was being offered a job in the organization the student worked for. Yeah, so this is something you have to go into the community. You have to listen. The walking interviews I think are great. I heard from an Asian university in Thailand. They work differently. They send out their students into rural communities, and they have to live there for 3 months. And so probably the first month is gaining trust of the elder and the people, and then to figure out what is the main issue in this community. But maybe the situation there is a bit different from situations in Europe. But I think the approach itself was good, was part of the study in the semester, and they had to do this external work, and they had to go out and had to live there, not just go in, ask, and go out again, but they had to live with the people. Might be an interesting idea for a semester project.
So I guess we've got 2 questions to cover briefly. One of them is the non-institutionalized ways and how to, Giuseppe's questions, and the other one is this pandemia-related changes and challenges. Shall we go into those ones? Because we have 1 minute left from the extended promise.
You go. I think you can talk faster.
Talk faster and Hunglish, but anyhow. So if you are not non-institutionalized, actually, I can talk a lot about how being institutionalized still doesn't help, and you have to be clever about how to work around this. But what you try to do here is to try to bring this into the continuous professional development of lecturers. So if there is a possibility they learn about this and they get credit about this, then even if the structure is not institutionalized, maybe this could start that process. And the other one, which is an entry point for us as well as being institutionalized, is the very many projects. Actually, in our university, it's very popular now to have project-based learning. And we are actually approaching those program coordinators with project-based learning. That can you imagine that the project is not just any kind of project, but it's a CERL project. So that's an entry point, I think. Emma, anything for the institutionalized, non-institutionalization?
I guess the only thing to add is we produced a kind of a leaflet on sustainability of science shops a while back, myself and my colleague in Queen's. And one of the things that really showed up time and again is the challenge of individuals in a university approaching the same community organizations without any central clearing point for it, some of whom will be very well motivated and will want the community to benefit. Some of whom will just think, I want my students to benefit. And they just go in. And, that certainly was a challenge for us in the early days. The communities said that university researchers had come and just ripped their knowledge out and gone and given nothing back. So I guess that's usually people like that are very well motivated, I have to say. But the trouble is they retire or they get sick or they move on, and then someone new comes in, and the institutional learning is lost and the organization has to start all over again. And so I suppose if that's what's happening in a university, it's usually good when the person is there. The problem is that at an institutional level, it can be very challenging, I think. And even for that individual, it can be very challenging as well, because they may have things that they can't do and they have no one to hand it over to. Or when they leave, they just see the destruction of everything that they've built, which is very sad as well. And certainly individuals have expressed sadness to me about that. So there are problems with it, although sometimes it's the best you can do. And sometimes that's what people build a science shop on top of as well.
Just I definitely have to mention here that our science shop is a non-university based science shop. When we started 35 years ago, we tried to get into Bonn University, and we were identified as some kind of left-wing long-hair student movement. So no way. So we established a non-for-profit organization outside of the university with relations to researchers in the university. Yeah, so it's not institutionalized in the university, but outside. And it took us a couple of years to be recognized by the two universities in our region. And now we are coordinators for projects we're doing with them, and we are offering trainings for researchers on co-creation, on citizen science. So this recognition took its time. So it's again the time factor. Yeah, so it didn't happen within 1 or 2 years, but it took, let me say, 10 years. But times have changed. So the recognition of the work we do, all science shops do, and other researchers without any linkage to science shops, etc. The recognition of this kind of engagement with communities is much higher than it was when we started with our science shops. So there's fertile ground.
Thank you. I think we must go now. We must leave. I know, I appreciate that these were very, very challenging questions that would need a session of their own. So if I might suggest, Giuseppe, that with the help of Francesca and Valentina, who are working on this project, we collect some material. That there is a lot of material in the Living Knowledge website, a lot of tutorials, a lot of tools. We might look for that into the very rich Living Knowledge website and point out these tools and resources to the participants of this webinar. We can do the scoping exercise for them as related to the questions that were raised today, so that we can have more instruments that can be used by the people. I think this is something we can do, besides asking Recca and Emma to share their slides with us, so that we can share them with all the participants this afternoon, but also all the other people that will be interested into the training exercise that we are working on. Okay. You were heroic.
Until the end.
Not, but thank you once again very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I know there are still very many questions that are still there, but we will have the chance to explore further in more meetings and webinars. What is very important for us is to build and consolidate this community of research, a community of inquiry, I would say, that can move on and move further on this way of engaged research and teaching. Thank you very much, and have a good evening. And I hope you enjoyed this webinar at least as much as I did. I hope you did. Thank you very much. Thank you, Emma. Thank you, Recca. Thank you, Norbert. And thank you also, Eraldo and Pier Andrea, who stayed with us till the end of the webinar. This testify the great interest the University of Sassari is giving to this initiative. Thank you.
Thank you to everyone. Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you very much.
Bye. Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.